Here is every single book that I've read this year in one sentence. Part 1 though, because we're only halfway through the year. I will just give you a heads up right now. The amount of run-on sentences you're about to hear is a little redonkulous, but by all means, let's just get started. Starting off solid with Kingdom of Ash, the perfect conclusion to the Throne of Glass series that will simultaneously rip up and heal your heart and soul at the same time. A Court of Thorns and Roses, a Beauty and the Beast retelling that takes a dark turn and begins the beautiful series of events that is the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. I realize this is the Polish version of the book. I don't actually have a physical copy of the English version, so just ignore the text, but this is this book. The Last Wish, the prequel to the Witcher series that basically covers all of season 1 of the TV show, but in a fairly hard to follow way that seemed worth it at the time. Then we have A Court of Mist and Fury. This is where the Beauty and the Beast retelling loses its happy ending, and the book takes you on an unexpected journey that will undoubtedly make you fall in love with the series, if you weren't already in love with it from book 1. 101 essays that will change the way you think. A cute conglomeration of essays that might not change the way you think, but they will still make you think about the mundane parts of life in a deeper, more intentional way. Betting on You. 2 children of divorce star a fake dating scheme as well as make a bet that was clearly a horrible idea in the first place that blows up in their face because duh. A Court of Wings and Ruin. A pretty pink brick of a book about a war that for the first time in my life since Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is actually something I can follow along with and dare I say enjoy. When I wrote these sentences, I didn't realize how much of a tongue twister some of these would be. A Court of Frost and Starlight. A little novella that plays not a big purpose, but to see how a fantasy culture might celebrate their equivalent to Christmas and most everyone has unresolved trauma. That was the best I could do, frankly. A Court of Silver Flames. Oh, just kidding, this isn't next. 8 Rules for Love. A book that really is just a collection and organization of all the relationship advice you've ever heard just packaged up and worded well. Now, A Court of Silver Flames. No, The Art of Closing the Sale. The first of a few job-related books that I read in an attempt to get better at my job. Now, A Court of Silver Flames. A book that is supposed to serve as a redemption arc for one character that now has equally split the entire fandom into whether or not this character has changed or if she's just made herself a victim of all of her horrible actions. Let me know which one you are in the comments. Obviously, without spoiling it though, guys, some people haven't read that book yet and they don't need spoilers. Don't even say who the character is, frankly. I think that would be a spoiler. Don't say who the character is. A House of Flame and Shadow. A disappointing conclusion of a series of plots that ran through the Crescent City series in which our main character is nothing like the character she was in the previous 2 books. I stinkin' said it. Check and Mate. This book follows 2 extremely annoying characters in what could have been such a fun and unique plot of young chess rivals. 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Undoubtedly the best self-help book that I've ever read that not just gives you 12 rules for life, but also the intense psychological research and reasoning that goes behind them. When People Are Big and God is Small, a book my mom read for her biblical counseling certification that she recommended for me that I actually read in a vlog that never ended up making it onto the channel. We recorded half of it and then life just happened, but there's footage of that somewhere. Stalking Jack the Ripper. A young academia lover's dream where a boy and a girl help a forensic scientist solve the mystery of Jack the Ripper. Haunting Prince Dracula. Another dark academia lover's dream where the same boy and a girl go to a forensic school in Romania and try to solve a murder case where the victims are staged to look like they were killed by vampires. Escaping from Houdini. Same boy and girl are on a cruise ship to the Americas, but the cruise ship is carnival themed, and as you probably already guessed, there is a murder mystery they have to solve. Capturing the Devil. An anticlimactic conclusion of our Sherlock and Watson retelling in the Americas where they solve yet another murder mystery. I did a whole video reading that entire series if you want to watch it. Beyond Order. 12 more rules for life that are not as punchy as the first 12, but still pretty good. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. A book that found really profound and scientific sounding ways of giving super generic advice. The Duke and I. I read these books just to hold me over until season 3 of Bridgerton came out, and I was surprised to find that book 1 was actually better than season 1. The Viscount Who Loved Me. In an interesting plot twist, season 2 was way better than book 2, and at this point I decided to stop reading the books and just rewatch the show instead. Once Upon a Broken Heart. A book that is quite literally impossible to put into a single sentence because this book was so phenomenal and it felt like everything down to the world, the plot, and the main characters was precisely written with me in mind. The Ballad of Never After. A continuation of one of the most beautifully written worlds that I've ever read in a long time, where everything that seems perfect goes wrong and everything that seems evil might not be so bad after all. And A Curse for True Love. A beautiful conclusion to a beautiful trilogy that had me crying poolside on spring break in Florida. Dance of Thieves. A very well-written book that was a little too political for my taste about a tribe leader and an ambassador of sorts from enemy territories. Vow of Thieves. A well-rounded and nice conclusion where good conquers in the face of evil. Becoming Free Indeed. If you grew up in circles like me and you know exactly who the Duggar family was and was too young to understand the scandal when everything came out, this book is a really well and kindly put explanation of everything that happened according to one of the older sisters. 1,000 Heartbeats. Honestly, one of the best Romeo and Juliet retellings I've read in so long, and even though it wasn't anything new or fantastical, it was a comfort read for sure. Daisy Jones and the Six. This book was so fantastically written and was equally enjoyable and frustrating and unbelievably heartbreaking, and I can't believe I haven't watched the TV show yet because the book was so good. Lore. An interesting plot with some of the worst execution I've ever read. Throne of Glass, the first book of one of the best book series of all time that I am rereading so I can make plot breakdown vlogs for you that you should totally go watch. A Dawn of Onyx, a very cheap attempt at trying to recreate the ACOTAR series that missed the mark in every possible way. This is another situation where I have the Polish edition of this book but not the English edition of this book, so just ignore the text. This is Blood of Elves, another Witcher book. The first book of the Witcher series that actually made me stop reading the series because it was making me ill the way that these adult characters were talking about a literal child that they were responsible for raising. Scythe. This is going to be a hard sentence to deliver. The most insane trilogy about what would happen if AI governed the entirety of the world and it solved most of the world's problems, including death, and because of that, the world had to set up a solution in order to control the world population and came up with the Scythedom, where there are literal people whose job it is to murder people at random, and you would be surprised the ethics and politics that come into play that will actually have you questioning what is right and wrong and overall questioning life. Wildfire. Two people who have daddy issues, and instead of dealing with their trauma, they decide to become summer camp counselors where dating is forbidden, but they already met before camp and have the hots for each other. Funny story. A story of a girl whose fiance cheats on her, so she needs a place to stay and ends up moving in with the ex-boyfriend of the girl her ex-fiance cheated on her with. That was a whirlwind. The Art of Woo, another book that I read in order to get better at my job, but I honestly can't say that it was great. How to Be an Overnight Success. Another book that was recommended to me to get better at my job, but it was quite literally a book full of contradictions where the author gives her life story and then gives advice, and the advice does not match up at all with the story of how she became successful. Counting the Cost. Another older Duggar sisters book, but she goes a little bit more into the scandal and a lot of the legal stuff that went down, and I think I even read this in a single day because it was so good. Sharp Objects, a very dark murder mystery that put me into a disassociated state for a week, but I'm fine. Draw Down the Moon, one of the worst written books I've read in years. Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. Another book I read to get better at my job that I would actually recommend. The Young Elites. I read this book in middle school and loved it and remembered reading book 2 but never book 3, so I picked this up in an attempt to finally reread the series and finish the series, and of course it was not as good as I remembered, but at this point I was already too deep to stop here. Crown of Midnight, the second book in one of the best series ever written in order to make you the plot breakdowns that you should totally watch. How to Pray, a collection of beautifully written essays that actually answers a lot of other voiced doubts as to whether or not prayer actually works, and spoiler alert, it does. Mr. Wrong Number. This book was so fun and cheeky, and in my opinion, it would be the next best rom-com movie, but last year I did read The Love Wager, not realizing it was book 2 of this one, and Love Wager was low-key way better. Ultra Processed People. I need you to read this book because it was one of the best books I've ever read about food and how the American food production system is slowly killing us and is extremely unethical. The Rose Society. The second book in the Young Elites that reminded me exactly why I stopped reading the book series and didn't read book 3, but at this point I was definitely way too deep to turn around. Thunderhead. So the AI we talked about is not just insanely intelligent, but is starting to grow emotional intelligence and even begins to care for one of the humans like a son, and it changes the games in a way that you would never guess because of it. The Midnight Star, a painfully long and unnecessary conclusion to the Young Elites that hands out redemption arcs like candy to people who don't deserve them. The Toll. A totally out-of-pocket and insane solution AI comes to in order to solve the world problems might actually floor you, even though this book did feel a little bit unnecessarily long. And I Darken. A book so bad that I do not even plan to pick up book 2, and I only read it so fast because I wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. This one I'm especially proud of. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, French. It took me about 4 months, but I can officially say that I read the entirety of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in French, and I'm very proud of myself for that. Guys, this was a goal that I've had for years, and I did it. I'm really proud of myself. Gleanings, a very large collection of short stories that may or may not contribute at all to the actual trilogy that I wouldn't recommend unless you're quite literally dying for more content. Talk Like Ted, another book I read for work that was actually insightful and enjoyable to read. The Rom-Commers. I actually finished this book today, and let me tell you, it might be one of the best contemporary romances I've read in a very, very, very long time. And last but not least, Heir of Fire, which I also read to give you a plot breakdown, and the next one actually comes out Monday, so definitely subscribe if you want to see that. And in the meantime, why don't you just check out some of my book reading challenges? I feel like those are really fun. I've done a couple ones this year, and I plan to do a couple more before the end of the year.